Good evening. Welcome to Larry Rinker Golf Live. I'm pleased to be joined this evening by my good friend, Mr. Mark Brooks, former PGA champion. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing very good. Very good.
So what's new and exciting?
Well, it's been fun around here. We've had a college golf tournament out at UT Golf Club where I do a lot of my practicing and playing when I'm down here in Austin. So it was mostly Big 12 teams playing. Got to watch a lot of the kids play 54 holes. We have the Sergio Garcia Jr. hosted junior event. It's an AJGA thing. It's one of their better fields. So I'm going to actually get out and watch the kids play a little bit. So that part's kind of exciting, seeing new people, the kids that are, for a fact, between that college event with, let's just say 80 players and 75 juniors, there's probably 8 or 10 of them that'll actually be between the LPGA and PGA Tour in the coming years. So it's kind of fun to see where'd they come from, and hopefully at some point, maybe we can push them along and help them find their way.
Well, it's interesting when we look back at the All-American plaques and you see the guys that made the teams, first and second, third teams, et cetera. And then you see which ones, the first teamers that went on to play and have successful PGA Tour careers, and then some of them don't.
No, I'll make a comment. I was fortunate enough to be asked to be the starter on the first tee on the final round there, because they play a 36-hole marathon the first round. They get their 54 holes in 2 days. Excuse me. So what would be interesting is if I watched, let's say, 2/3 of the field tee off the first tee. Larry, with very few exceptions, would I have said that looked strange, different, odd, or unusual. I mean, these kids, it was like a robot, jumped up there, different sizes, of course. But I saw, if I saw 50 swings go off there, I saw 48 swings that looked really good to me.
One thing I like looking at swings is I like looking at flow and kind of how natural do they look versus how contrived they look.
I look for rhythm. It's sort of like if you were looking for, a musician or a vocalist. Technically, they all seem sound, but which one has that? It's that something special, something that's pretty hard to put your finger on or even describe. But, I've been on this for a while, especially with the kids I get to work with some. The art of the waggle is basically disappeared from golf. It's not taught. It's very rarely talked about. And it is actually to me, it's the rhythm maker, the start, to help start your golf swing. I see a lot of, club heads stuck to the ground, basically, with a little bit of feet chatter, and then they figure out when to take it back. I attribute that a lot to the too much time on the launch monitors, inside, hitting off, AstroTurf, and maybe a little too much range time. So I think if there was a little more, it's like you're saying, flow. So it was funny. I would have picked out 5 or 6 guys. The guys I picked would have probably had that. Some really interesting, obviously unique to each player, but they would have had a starter to their swing, mimicking, the takeaway. And I love seeing that. Most of the great players, in golf have had that. And for some reason, I think it's a little bit lost with the tempo, and the waggle, I think, is something that's not emphasized enough in golf.
Well, I think another thing that's not emphasized enough is how well people commit, what their mental fortitude is, how tough are they when things are not going well, and really just this whole mental game of toughness and being able to close and being able to get the job done, make that cut, win that tournament, make tour school, make your college golf team, make the travel team for the next tournament. All the little steps there are to getting, to the highest level. And I just think a lot of times we kind of take that for granted, but there's definitely differences with the players.
No question about it. Proper goal setting. And then there's, the plan, and everybody's different. I mean, some people aren't as regimented as others, but, a word I probably overuse, but I think it's a fantastic word, is organized. Organize your practice, organize your mind, and so that you can use the word priority, but to play great golf, you really can't have a lot of, strong weaknesses anymore. So I have to learn to organize my time so I can work on my weaknesses, yet not neglect my strengths. But being organized is huge. So
no, it is, especially when you're trying to figure out, well, how much time am I going to work on my putting? How much time in my short game? How much time my golf swing? How much time out on the golf course? And I found throughout my career, when I was playing well, I didn't need to spend as much time practicing. I wanted to play more. And when things weren't going that well, I felt like I need to put a little time in on the rock pile.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we probably are all guilty of way too much time just putting time in
Right.
at the rock pile.
Yeah.
So, if you have, meaningful, focused practice, you're going to get a lot more out of it. And, you've probably been around. I've been lucky enough to have been around some, let's say great basketball coaches. So since we're about to start March Madness. In fact, I think they may have already tipped. These guys organize these practices. I mean, they run shot clocks. And so there's 15 minutes spent on, let's say defensive footwork drills. Then they go to ball handling drills. Then they may go to individual drills where they have the big man and one, doing one thing and the guards doing another thing. Same principle can apply to golf. It's if I say I have 3 hours to practice and I can divide it into 30-minute segments.
Right.
Even if I don't get done in that 30 minutes, let's say it's putting, I've got to move on.
Right.
I know what I didn't get done today, but I have to move on. So I'm going to keep, every aspect of my game. And then you walk away and you don't feel like, I need to stay out there till dark. So that idea of just, I'm going to be the last man on the range and that's going to make me the best player. I do not subscribe to that. I probably used to, but it's just sometimes if you got something going bad, then why groove it? I mean,
right.
And I will say the advantage that these kids have to launch monitors and things that we didn't have, we chased it and we sort of, I'm not going to I'll use it, but it's not applicable, but dig it out of the dirt. We literally had to dig it out of the dirt, for one, because we actually had a little bit of erroneous information about, what made the golf ball do what it does.
Right.
Especially when it came to curves. I know for myself, I'll speak for myself. Had I known that, the ball started generally where the club face is pointed at impact, I think I could have been a much better fader on call of the golf ball. I had to learn that basically through trial and error, Larry. And I finally learned through watching, the guys at Colonial playing the fifth hole, where you basically had to hit a big cut. Only when the cutters came through, I've used Hale Irwin as an example. You had to hit, say a 20, 25 yard fade off the tee. He would get on the right side of the tee box. This is a left to right hole. So he got basically as close to the creek as he could. He teed it lower and he aimed his club face well to the left. He then swung left to that, but I didn't know that.
Right.
But I did know that I'm like, man, his club face is to the left. How's that thing not hooking? Well, we didn't know. Well, he's swinging left to that. So had you known that at, 15 or 14 or 16, you wouldn't have wasted a lot of hours really fighting it the wrong way and just sort of stumbling onto something that kind of worked for you. So I think
we definitely grew up in an era where we believed the initial fly of the ball was path, not face.
No question.
And we now know it's face. And I can remember watching guys hit balls on the range and I could swear the club went left and I saw the ball start off quite a bit to the right. I'm like, how's that happening? And now I understand why, because it was starting closer to the face. But it's, knowledge is power. I mean, we didn't have TrackMans and flight scopes that told us where our path was. To me, that's the number one thing I want to know when I hit on a launch monitor. What's my path?
Well, I can honestly say I didn't really see my swing broken down like slow-mo. And it was on, I want to say 8mm in 1987. And I got to working with a pro in Fort Worth named Doug Higgins. I'm sure you've met Doug Higgins. It's actually Doug Higgins Jr. His dad played the tour back in the 50s. and early 60s, and Doug was his son. And so we were fortunate at our club, Arnold Palmer and, Lee Trevino was a regular, Jim Thorpe. We had David Graham. Uh, we had all kinds of players that would come through and play, especially when Colonial and Byron Nelson were there. But so I was around a lot of great players, but Doug finally got an 8mm, and I was about to lose my card probably for good at the end of 87. And he finally got the film out, and I got to see it, and I'm like, wow, is that bad? That's really bad. And but I will say it, by being able to see what I was doing, opposed to having to just try to feel what I was doing, I was able to make pretty dramatic changes, let's just say in a 3 or 4 month period, that probably might have taken a year or maybe never would have happened.
Right.
So it was 8mm. I probably still have some around here, and I had fallen prey to the swing de jour. Take it back outside, loop it around underneath. Don't take a divot. You're going to be a drawer, but if you'll set up to the left, you'll be really cool. That'll look really cool.
Right.
Set your body left and hit a big old high draw. It didn't work for me. So,
right. Well, you made the tour school 5 years in a row.
Well, actually 4 out of 5. I kept my card my first year, believe it or not, after getting my card.
Okay.
But probably should have gone back. It'd have been a good lesson. But
right.
that was the year.
87, you make it for what, the 4th or 5th time?
That was my 4th time. And then pretty much I lasted until, middle 2000s.
And then you went Hartford in 88.
That was a result of the 8mm and Doug Higgins Jr. fixing my golf swing. And, whether we were right or wrong, it was pretty much get connected, keep my upper arms, connected to my chest as long as I could, start turning better, became more rotary. Still had the proper amount of, slide, but I had really gotten so, outside going back, and what you would call classic, just ridiculously laid off. I really didn't even have a finish to my backswing. So I kept the shaft, let's call it the shaft, on a pretty simple plane. And I worked on that really hard. And so what I fought is in, fighting, let's just say for the next 12 to 15 years, I fought, as long as I didn't let that club, drop dramatically on the downswing, I had to keep it up. If I kept it up, I hit a lot of good shots. And, as you know, fortunately, I had a pretty good run for, 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
Basically never really changing any fundamentals once I got there. So, I subscribe to the, if you're going to change the flight, change it with your setup, change the face angle and your alignment.
Right.
And go from there. And I still believe this today. I felt like it was hard enough to learn one good repeatable swing that whatever shot that produces, that's what I'm going to play. I could always hit, you learned how to hit specialty shots to get out of trouble. But so basically it was, I just subscribed to that theory. So it's like one swing, let's work on that basically the rest of my playing career, opposed to like what we grew up on is you got a hook swing and a cut swing and a high swing and a low swing. I just moved the ball around and I learned where I needed to put my body to have to actually create the shot. So that was my theory. I basically subscribe to that today.
Well, let's take a look at your swing. Now, this is 2013.
This is broken down. Look at that knee. It's gone.
So here you are, and we'll bring you up down the line too.
I'd had knee surgery, not too far beyond. So this is way too tilted over.
Right.
Bad socks. Club face closed on the backswing, but the toes hanging.
But don't you think, what I'm hearing you say is where you were in trouble is you were too much under the plane and got swinging too into out. That's where you got in trouble.
Well, that would have been, yes. And that would have been my younger self. I was definitely not as tilted over as this.
But now you got it pretty planed right there. So not bad.
They don't move the golf ball. So you guys like us, we know how to go find that thing. We can put the face on the ball.
So there you are, going down a little bit to get to it.
I've always gone down.
And then there's your draw release right there.
Larry, every time I tried to keep my head up and
Yeah.
not let it go down, I will say I lost, just for an argument's sake, 10, 15 miles an hour. It would literally, I couldn't hit it anywhere. I could do it, but it was just not dynamic.
Right.
So by going down, and I've done a little bit of research on it, there's more really good players that go down varying degrees, maybe in only an inch or so, but I've never seen a great player that actually goes up prior to impact. You see them, jumping at drivers now, but it's a different
Right.
animal.
Right. But here
So
you are. This was at Vince Gill's Pro-Am.
yeah, 55 years old. That's awful.
Yeah, it's an old man swing. But it looks like you're a little straighter back and really a little over the top there, just a hair. And I think that's really, a lot of times
That's
just
embarrassing.
Seeing our swings really, we can kind of see things. I think one of the big things is getting the arms synced up with the chest.
I agree 100%.
And I think too many players get the chest ahead of the arms, and that's the stuck feeling, and that's where you get out of sequence. And I prefer my players to get them a little past early and hook it. I'd rather see them do that than hit the high handle block. I just think that's a worse shot.
Well, there's just so much emphasis right now on nothing but speed.
Right.
How fast did I move the club head, and how fast did my ball exit?
Right.
That you're seeing a lot of people that are early rotating early. And you go, well, what's the consequence? Well, they hit it 9 miles. If they're in the right setting, they're fine, because they're going to have nothing but wedges and short irons left, even if they're off 20 yards right or left. But there's been such an emphasis on speed and how to gain speed that I'm just going to say there's going to be a lot of players left behind. I'm personally, I'm a little sad about it, not because I'm, 5'9" and I would have never flown the ball, 325 yards in the air, but I do not want to see our sport end up where, you have to meet parameters. Let's just say parameters. If you don't swing the club head, 125 miles an hour, you're not going to ever play the PGA Tour. I'd hate to see that day come.
Yeah, I would too. But I think it's interesting how certain courses, whether it's Hilton Head or courses that aren't even 7,000 yards, that still their position really, the stadium course last week, it's more of a target golf course. It's not 7,500 yards. Precision players are going to do well at Pete Dye golf courses like the TPC Stadium course last week at the Players. So it's kind of fun to see those courses, but I agree with you. I think there's a lot of golf courses on the PGA Tour where the power guy has a big advantage, and even if he's a little off, he's still going to be okay. But so many people, Mark, have swallowed that pill of trying to get longer, and the next thing you know, they totally lose their driver. They can't find fairways. And so it's just amazing what Bryson DeChambeau has done, picking up 20-mile-an-hour club head speed, 50 yards, and yet he still has his accuracy. That's just something that's never, ever happened on the PGA Tour before.
No, I agree. It's to be commended. It's to be admired, observed, but not, I hope it doesn't become the norm.
Well, most people fail. It's kind of like climbing Mount Everest.
Well, that's true. I mean?
There's a lot of people that
they're going to hit sideways.
Well, they go for that. Next thing you know, they're not playing the PGA Tour anymore. And you and I have friends that happened to.
No, there's no doubt. And I mean, I'm sure that swing you saw a minute ago, 53, it's probably still chasing distance. The question would be, what do I do about it? If I'm governing body or, influencer.
Right.
So that's where we have to be careful with today's society. If it gains this huge, let's just call it social media following to push for that and not for, is it right or is it, something we shouldn't see that takes over golf?
Right.
So they have to find a proper solution. And when you said that, so that long player doesn't have too big of an advantage, the long driver, when he's accurate, has always, since the game began, had an advantage.
Totally.
The difference is the equipment couldn't keep up with super high speeds.
Right.
The ball would overspin as well as go offline. And so I think they're looking at it. I hope so. I mean, I promise you, I'm not making this up, but 25 years ago, or probably close to 25 years ago, there were some inklings about what they were going to do. It was actually, I can tell you, it was probably not quite that long ago, 2002 to 2004. A certain ball came out that was sort of revolutionary, which had picked up on some other companies that had already gone solid core, and the ball started going straight. And all these guys are talking about 10% rollback. We're having a conversation. I said, well, if you fly at 300 yards and I take 10% off, you only going to fly that guy's going to fly at 270. That's what you want, correct? They're all go, yeah, that's it. I said, well, how far do you hit it? They said, well, my good hit's about 265 to 270. I said, you know where you're going to fly it? About 240. And we were at a long golf course. It was kind of wet. And I said, you do realize if the wind switched out of the north, there's 4 fairways here. None of us could even reach the fairway. So they're like, well, I didn't think about that.
Right.
So it's like, be careful what you ask for. Now I'm going to go back. Davis Love III, who's a buddy of all of ours, was one of the great drivers. He was long and he had tons of speed, would have had more speed had he needed it. Let's go back into the late 80s, early 90s. The ball literally spun too much. So those guys self-throttled. They played low lofted drivers. They swung heavier shafts, and they launched the ball at very low trajectories to keep it in play. Phil Blackmar, a good friend.
And they hit a lot of 3/4 shots.
But they actually drove the ball really good, but they drove it really low line drive. That same guy that launched at 7, I watched Davis do it. Let's fast forward 5 years, new balls come out, new changes. That same player that was launching at, say, 6 to 8 degrees is now launching at 14 or 15.
Right.
His driver has 5 or 6 degrees more loft on. You go, what is wrong with this picture? And they're driving it straighter. So in my world, spin and directional control is where it's got to go back to. And I think the greatest players, the Tiger Woods, Sergio's, great ball strikers, manipulators of the ball that could control their golf ball, they would have excelled even further.
Right.
So if we want to see a separation of the greatest skilled athletes, make that golf ball harder to control.
Right.
That's how you will separate, not by making the ball go straight and everybody's all close together.
Yeah, well, I think it's kind of hard. I think it's hard that we now know that there's a ball that's better for me than another ball.
Sure.
And that other ball might be better for another player. So, the idea that we play one ball, I just don't see that, because one guy's going to be better off, one guy's not. I don't really know what the answers are, but, we have, through the course and the history of time, the ball has always gotten better. The equipment has always gotten better. We just have not seen the changes in the distance that we have seen, especially in the last 20, 25 years.
And I'll try this on you. You said it's gotten better. It's gotten longer and it's gotten straighter.
Yes.
Thereby making the game seem easier.
Right.
They took spin out. Players like you, yourself, and myself, our scores didn't go down dramatically because the ball went further and straighter. In fact, some of the scoring opportunities became more difficult because we lost a little bit of that spin control. It's an interesting argument, but I think it cuts both ways. And
yeah,
I will tell you this: I disagree with you on the fact that you said, maybe I don't have the answer. Actually, it's people like us that should be real involved in helping the solution. Collectively, you and I have been playing, let's just call it, way better than scratch golf. You're not going to like this, but we would be almost 100 years.
Right.
I broke par at, let's say white tees at 11 with a club special. They were $1 a piece. You couldn't beat them up, but
right.
So yes, I think all opinions matter. You know, it's not just our age, but it's our experience factor and the fact that we've stayed tied to the game,
Right.
dramatic, you know, really involved in the game. And so we're seeing the evolution. And it's like, I personally want to see the skill factor become the greatest differentiation in between
Right.
two players. I believe if you make the main object that I'm trying to get in the hole tougher to control, I will then find separation.
Well,
I'll stop there.
that is a great point. The Larry Rinker Golf Live is on Thursday nights, 7:30 to 8 p.m. Eastern. My new book is out, The Journeyman. You can pick that up at larryrinker.com. And there's Mark Brooks, 1996 PGA champion. I'd like to thank my sponsors, Titleist, FootJoy, the Ritz-Carlton Golf Club Orlando, and the Red Sky Golf Club in Vail, Colorado. Also, FlightScope and V1. Brooksy, I'm glad you made my book. I think I might have met you at Colonial in 1983
I certainly did.
when I was a Champion's Choice and you and Brandel were there playing as amateurs. Boy, that was almost 40 years ago now.
I got your book this morning. I am now going to, I thumbed through it as, you know, not quickly, but every chapter had something really great in it. I was impressed with every piece of it. You know, your ability to recall, the fact that you kept notes, you know, kept a journal is phenomenal. I'm not making this up for my students, especially my younger ones. I'm not say younger, college age and under, or anybody that's really serious about playing golf, which I try to, you know, focus on that type of player. It's a must read.
Well, thanks.
I'm telling you, you're going to, if it's like anything you say, if you gave a kid a lesson and you spent 6 hours with him and he walked away with one or two things that stuck, you've done your job.
Right.
I think your book's even better than that, but it's like every time you read it, you're going to find a new nugget or tidbit, something that makes sense. Right. And like we talked earlier, something you can relate to, something that happened in your life, may not even have to do with golf. I love the book. Right. It's fantastic, and it's a must read.
Well, thanks, Brooksy. And Brooksy, always great to catch up with you, my friend. Thanks for coming on Larry Rinker Golf Live. Till next week, keep swinging.